The following is a presentation of the Match Talk Podcast Network. It's time for the ODU Wrestling Monarch Mattcast, a show dedicated to all things related to the Old Dominion Wrestling program, on the web at monarchmattcast.com. Now, here's your host, three-time National Wrestling Writer and Broadcaster of the Year, and 2004 ODU alumnus, Jason Bryant.
And welcome back, Monarch Nation, another episode of the ODU Wrestling Monarch Mattcast. Today, we are going west to the great state of Utah. Not a place where you find a whole lot of Monarchs, although there are a couple out there. Our guest today, a former wrestling Monarch, Josh Tyler, although those of us that knew Josh at his time at Old Dominion never really called him by his real name, but I can understand that completely. We called him the Whammer. I don't know what the heck, how many different names we had. But he is our guest today. Josh, been a long time, man. Welcome to the program.
It's been far too long, to be honest with you. And yes, I've gone by many names in my day. Far too many to count, I would say. But yeah, man, it's great to be on. Great to chat with you.
What we had back in the day, and this was during Steve Martin's first year. I remember the nickname thing. It made it into the media guide as we're breaking down the stuff. You know, of course, I'm doing a lot of the writing for Steve because his typing skills were pretty limited back then, and it was like. You know, instead everybody has like, nickname. I was just like, I'm putting it has a variety of nicknames, and that was pretty much it. So I just had the one. You had like 40.
Yeah, well, it's funny because even in a lot of my fights, it'll be like this 5-minute ordeal going through all the different nicknames. And the announcers, as they do, they like to embellish and have a little fun with it. So, I let them do their thing. But yeah, there's been a handful over the years.
And one of those things, just so as Josh is alluding to fighting, yes, he is, or at least is taking a little time away from the professional mixed martial arts career. Yes, the guy threw blows, caught hands, threw hands for a living, doing a bunch of cool things. Now we'll talk about that in a minute. But one thing that on your Sherdog Fight Finder, you are listed as El Cabron. Now, when you go and Google what that could mean a couple of different things. Some of them are favorable, some of them not so much. Which version of the El Cabron will you kind of side with?
Yeah, I guess it depends on who you ask. The El Cabron was a nickname that was given to me when I had the chance to fight down in the Dominican Republic. I fought down there a couple of times, won a belt and defended a belt down there, which was pretty cool. So I had a championship fight in the Dominican Republic, and for whatever reason, I picked up that moniker. And to this day, I don't know if it was a compliment or an insult, to be quite honest with you.
I still wonder that about my nickname as well, but to this day. So let's just go back in time. You wrestled at one of the least politically correct high schools in the country, Lee Davis High School, nicknamed the Confederates in Mechanicsville, Virginia. Instead of worrying about that and how the political side of things would go with the relevance there, but how'd you
probably should have given a trigger warning at the beginning of this. Failed to mention we were going to go down that route.
Yes, Catholic Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia. But you're from Mechanicsville. But so how did you get involved in wrestling initially?
Wrestling was something that, man, I really didn't know much about as a young lad. Guys that I played football with were constantly trying to get me to be a part of that. And I was like, I don't know, man. They're jumping off of ropes and hitting each other with chairs. Seems kind of weird, right? So I didn't get it. I had no idea what folk style wrestling actually was.
Wasn't that?
Yeah, clearly it wasn't that. It wasn't until I got into middle school, and it so happened that the football coach was also the wrestling coach, and he convinced me to just come out and do wrestling as a way to stay in shape year round for football, which was my passion, which was funny because at the time I was like 80 pounds soaking wet, so the prospect of me playing football in any, real capacity was really a pipe dream. But, in my mind, that growth spurt, I'm still waiting on the growth spurt, as a matter of fact. It's going to come one of these days. So anyway, wrestling, I was introduced in middle school, and it was kind of one of those things that just instantaneously says like, oh my gosh, this is like all the best parts of football without all the nonsense. There's no standing around and waiting. You get to wreck people and tackle them down to the ground for 6 minutes straight. This is amazing. And so that's how I got into it, and then progressed from middle school on to high school, had some success there. Won some district titles and regional title, and made it to states a few times, and then eventually ended up walking on to the Old Dominion wrestling team. As I got accepted to the school, I was like, well, obviously, my only purpose for going to college was actually to wrestle. Didn't realize there was this whole recruiting, how that actually worked. So essentially just showed up, and it's like, yeah, no, I'm wrestling. And they're like, I'm sorry, who are you? I'm like, well, I'm here to be on the wrestling team. They're like, yeah, okay, guy, sure thing. And so that's kind of how I got my foot in the door, and I just stuck around for the remaining 4 years. Won some matches, lost some matches. I'd say I'm probably one of the okayest wrestlers that Old Dominion has seen on the mats. That was kind of the process.
There's a couple things you said that we need to go a little deeper on. Now, when you talked about you're worried about the ropes and the stuff. So flash forward when you're in college, I don't know if this was actually while you were still student athlete, you were in a professional wrestling ring as a pizza delivery boy with Guar of all groups. What, dude, come on.
I actually didn't know that you knew that.
I saw the video.
Oh, there's a video of that?
There was a video of it. I think Gosnell or somebody might have had it, but.
Oh, man. Yeah. So that was an interesting, I think that was senior year going into my freshman year of college. So I don't think I was technically
okay.
So, I think it was on the up and up, right? But yeah, I got invited to do a battle royale at this local wrestling league. It was Richmond Lucha Libre. A buddy of mine that I had wrestled with in high school had been doing this for years. They needed some extra guys, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Sounds great. Special guest was Guar, which was obviously insane. And we so the night before, I spent a couple of hours with my buddy just going over the basics of how to do professional wrestling and do bumps and all the stuff that they do in that. So I get out there, and I'm going to run around and do my thing in this melee. And eventually this guy, the character by the name of Stabbing John Kickass was his name. some combination of those words.
Algonquin tribe, right?
What's that?
Algonquin tribe, right?
Yeah, most likely. He was going to be the one to kick me out of the ring, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. When that'll be my cue when that guy comes up to me. So I'm going around and doing my thing and giving some blows, taking some blows, and I got this guy in the corner, and I'm just stomping him down into the ropes, right? I turn around, and I am met with a steel chair over the head that just drops me like a freaking sack of potatoes, man. Just took me off my feet. There was no faking it. There was no playing that up. It 100% set me down on the canvas. I was like, whoa, we did not practice how to do that.
Hey, when did we practice chair shots?
Yeah. So I was grossly underprepared for the whole endeavor, but it was a lot of fun. I was the pizza guy, and someone called me to deliver. They stiffed me on the tip. So of course I had to get retribution by joining in the fight. That was the storyline, at least, and it was a good time.
Oh man, I'm just picturing this in my head again, because there's somebody who's actually trying to be believable getting hit with an empty pizza box. That's the one thing I remember most about watching that. I think that might have been the night we watched Reversal too, and then threw the DVD down the hallway because it was terrible. Moving forward into your career, so you come into Old Dominion at an interesting time. Gray Simon's a legendary wrestling coach. two-time Olympian, one of the baddest dudes to ever wrestle on the planet. He's entering his final year. Doesn't let anybody know yet that he's going to be retiring. Brings on my former roommate Jeff Rusak and Jamie Kelly, who was on the team my first freshman year there, and had a pretty good successful high school coaching career at Cox. And then so we've got Rusak and Kelly's assistants, the living legend Gray Simon's walking around that room, and the old practice room that was disjointed, had pillars. I mean, what were your first impressions of Division I wrestling when it says, okay, you've gotten past the whole, I'm here to wrestle thing. You're actually go through the clearinghouse and whatnot. You get cleared. You're on the team. What were your first impressions of D1 wrestling?
I thought it was fantastic. The one thing that was a bit of a shock to me was I thought I was in pretty good shape. I had been wrestling for years. I've been conditioning. I've been training. I've been lifting, right? And I show up to Division I practice, and they just ran me into the ground. And I was nowhere near, ready for that level of physical abuse in terms of the conditioning that we were going through. That was one of the biggest, wake-up calls for me. It's oh, man, I thought I was, I thought I was a pretty solid dude. And guys are just running circles around me. I remember the first few days of conditioning being dead last in everything that we were doing, man. And it was so disheartening. I was like, oh man, I might not belong here, but thankfully, or not, I don't know. I was too stupid to quit. And so I just kept showing up and working and just trying to work my way up the pack, right? Find someone who was ahead of me, catch up to that guy, right? And then pass him and pass the next guy. And, the thing that I loved about what we were doing that first year is it was so gritty. That room, and no one who wrestles there now will have any concept of just, how much of a dungeon that our training room was at the time. But I loved it, man. I loved the aesthetic. And, I was able to kind of work and claw and bite and scratch and get my way to where, at least in terms of conditioning, Jamie Kelly was having me be the guy to beat. You know what I mean? There was a point where I was leading, and I was the pace setter and stuff. And that was a good feeling to start from way behind the pack and work my way up. And unfortunately, I ran into some injuries and stuff that kind of took me out for a while. But it was a great learning curve, a great experience that first year, kind of cutting my teeth in that room with those guys.
And one thing to consider, too, you're coming from a pretty good high school program. Granted, you didn't have the state placement that you had desired your senior year, but then you go. But let's be honest, Old Dominion Wrestling that particular time wasn't very good. I mean, we had some good guys in that room, but as a whole, you're like, oh, okay, well, the team's not super good. I should be able to do okay. And then to come to that reality, even the middling to slightly below average teams have ball busting type of conditioning.
Yeah, it was like nothing I had ever experienced. I thought that, Jamie Kelly and still do, man, probably one of the hardest nosed individuals on the planet. I was like, that guy, you know what I mean? Because he would just crush us. And so, but here's the best part, right? So after that, moving forward, so, Gray retired and Steve Martin came in with a whole new coaching staff. And I thought, well, surely nothing will compare to what we did the year before, right? And
wrong.
Boy, was I wrong. I mean, you talk about demoralizing. If I thought the first year was hard, what Steve had us doing when he first came in, because essentially, man, he was taking out the trash. In his mind, he's like, look, man, I've got a bunch of derelicts and guys that probably don't belong here, that, I'm trying to whip this program around. And, and to be fair, some of us probably didn't have our priorities straight in terms of our extracurricular activities. We'll just put it that way. I think that's a good PC way to phrase that, right?
I may or may not know anything about what you're talking about, but go ahead.
Okay. As we describe this in the most vaguest way possible.
We don't know anything about Chicho's being open. Nope. We don't know anything about. I do want to break out the fact that me and Gosnell did start the MXC drinking game my very last day of college, but that's another podcast topic entirely.
Oh man, that's one of the most amazing drinking games of all.
Yeah, let's not focus on drinking games on the show that's paid for by the school. So continue. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so moving forward, Well, no, but it was, it was great though, because, we transitioned into this new program, right? And in order to get there, there were obviously going to be some growing pains, and we had them, trust me. I mean, there were days where it was just like, man, I don't think it is humanly possible to endure any more than what we've gone through. And surprise, you think that was bad. Wait till tomorrow. You know what I mean? We literally, our running mantra was, the only easy day was yesterday. It was, and it was true, man. I mean, we're running 3 a days. It was just, we were doing stadium workouts, which we had never done. I had never done before, to the point where I vividly remember carrying people up the stairs and being carried up the stairs and just praying that one of us would collapse and I would just take a header and be done. It's like I wasn't going to quit, but if I like fell and knocked myself out, then that would be an acceptable way out. It was that intense. It was that level of, intensity.
Yeah, because a lot of places, and you kind of alluded to this, that when there is a coaching change, there is a bit of attrition, there is a changeover, there is a contrast in styles with the existing Russ. And this is not just with programs like Old Dominion. You've seen it. You see it at Iowa. You saw it at Virginia Tech. You see it at all the big programs. When there is a coaching change, there is turnover, and some of that's the philosophical. Okay, I don't necessarily see eye to eye with coach's style. Kids transfer, whatnot, but one thing that Old Dominion wrestling has really been known for, from eternity, is putting wrestlers into the real world, so to speak. You look at the entire Southeastern District. It seems like it's being coached by ODU alumni. Pierce, Buckner, Small. Yeah. I mean Motley. I mean, you got all these guys coaching everywhere.
All these guys. Yeah.
and you're out in Utah doing who knows what. We'll get to that in a minute. But we're seeing the wrestling community as a big part of the community. And when you look back at your time before you went off into the real world, a couple things I want to point out is what do you remember first about the first experience as a starter in the Old Dominion lineup? Because I kind of remember it vividly.
Man, that was like one of the coolest moments for me. That was such a huge feather in the cap. Coming in as a freshman, and seeing the guys get to wear the uniform and go out and compete on that stage and go to all these big time tournaments, competing in the Virginia duels, which, as a kid, when you compete as a high school kid, you're looking at all those collegiate teams, Division I teams, right? And you're just looking up to those guys. And then to be in the same singlets, right, of the guys out there and have that opportunity, that was such a huge thing for me that I was like, man, it was kind of surreal. And the guys the footsteps that I was following in, right, at 149, the guy that I was really wanting to emulate and kind of model myself after was Dennis Whitby. I remember showing up as a freshman and grappling with him and just be like, this guy is untouchable. You know what I mean? Like, just one of the slickest dudes that I had ever, been on the mat with. And so again, to earn a starting spot in the weight class and following in those footsteps, man, was a huge honor for me.
I do remember the trip to Edinburgh, though. You had beaten, Jeff Becker at the time was a highly sought after recruit, Fargo runner up. You beat him in the wrestle off in the intra squad. You go up to Edinburgh and you draw some guy named Gregor Gillespie, who ended up having a pretty good college career. What do you remember about that particular outcome?
I remember it did not go the way that I was hoping for it. And it's one of those things where sometimes I don't know if it's good or bad to know or not know who you're going against, right? Like, I don't know if it's good to have some level of expectation, because to me, like, every dude was just a dude. I didn't know anybody. Like, I don't know, he's just some guy, right?
If it wasn't on the Central Region Wrestling Forum, you didn't know who they were, right?
Yeah, no clue, right? I mean, we didn't have the internet where you could, to the extent where you could look guys up and you could know, oh, hey, this is so-and-so. Unless he was a returning national champion or All-American, he was just some guy. Right. And so, you have no way of judging. You're like, okay, well, either I sucked the worst I've ever sucked because I got my ass handed to me by that guy, or maybe actually he was pretty decent and, I did okay. But it was, without knowing and having the context of who these guys are, you never really know. It's just like, well, that sucked. No, on to the next one, I guess.
Yeah, Gregor Gillespie was a 4-time All-American and a national champion, and actually is also an MMA fighter as well. So,
yeah.
I mean,
so he's no chump. Yeah, but again, you don't know that. All you know is you're like, oh man, geez, I really thought I was going to win that.
They're going to count those near falls. Did he ever release the arm on that tilt? Come on.
Yeah. Oh man, it was. So that was an unfortunate, foray into the starting lineup.
But, we drove 8 hours, and I got to wrestle this freaking guy.
Thanks a lot. I mean, can we like at least dip our toe in? It's like, nope, deep end with no swimmies, bro. Sorry, you're up.
Like, yeah. Right. We didn't get Slippery Rock first. We got Edinburgh. How the heck did that work?
Yeah, we drew the short straw. Well, but here's the thing, man, and this is one of the beautiful things to me about wrestling in general, is it puts you in those scenarios, right, where you don't have training wheels. You're just there, and you have to sink or swim. And if you don't swim, then you have to got to bootstrap yourself up and go on to the next one. There is no room for self-pity in that sport, and I think it's a great life lesson. And I think that it's something that, if you can have the stomach and the heart for it and see it through to the end, you're going to come out on the other side with a whole nother perspective, and just a great outlook that's going to set you up, I think for greatness in life, hopefully.
Before we get to what you're doing now and things since you've left Old Dominion, with the busy life living out west, you got kids now, and what is your I don't want to say relationship, but how much do you pay attention to the program, and what are some cool things that you've been able to see, at least from a distance, on what Coach Martin's been doing for the last 14, 15 years now?
Yeah, geez, man, it's been a while. Well, you're really dating us now. The thing that I'm following, I don't know all the guys that are showing up. I mean, I'm catching bits and pieces here and there. I'm seeing some familiar faces through Virginia wrestling kind of make their way through. When I finished my collegiate career, I went back to my alma mater, to my high school, and coached there for a little bit. So I got to see some of the guys and coach with them and against them. And now to see some of these studs coming up through the program and transitioning out, that was really cool to watch. And then also seeing, all the guys showing up. I mean, you got Old Dominion's been doing a great job on their Facebook of posting, the wrestlers and their rankings, and, guys making dean's lists and academic All-Americans and all that stuff. So those are the things that I see. And I don't know these guys by name. I couldn't pick them out of a crowd necessarily, but just to see that they're doing good things, man, I think for me, it's a sense of pride. It's like, man, that's awesome. We got guys ranked here and here. This dude just won this match. This guy just, made this accolade, whatever that is. I mean, to look back on your, on your alma mater and see them doing good things, man, it's really cool.
Cool in 2009 to turn on ESPN and see Ryan Williams wrestling in the NCAA finals.
Oh, dude, freaking seeing Willie up there, man, that was one of the cool, because I remember looking at him. I remember being his host when he came in on his recruiting class, and I'm looking at this gangly, kind of awkward little dude, and I'm like,
giant teeth. Chompers was his first nickname. His first nickname was Chompers.
Yeah, all teeth, right? And all teeth and elbows, this guy. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I don't know if you're going to be able to cut it, dude, because I feel like I'm pretty tough, and it took every ounce of tenacity for me to withstand what we're doing, and I don't know if you can cut it, dude. And this kid showed up, man, and just busted his hump every day and worked and worked and worked, and it wasn't a huge surprise for me to see him at that level, because I knew he was phenomenal. I knew he was a stud. But just for meeting him on day one and then seeing him finally, being in the finals, man, it was such a cool process to watch. And to actually be a part of and actually have had the chance to drill and train and work out with him. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, that's cool.
Now with what you're doing now, we'll get back into the fighting bit for a little bit, because there's also an interesting story between what you're doing now with what's called Savage Gentlemen and your MMA career. You had an opportunity in 2013 to fight in Bellator. And not only did you fight in Bellator, you did that a couple times. Your opponent was a guy named Shannon Slack, who not only was from Richmond, he was your teammate at Old Dominion. I mean, I remember you sent me a message back in the day. I think it was on your whatever your AIM name was. Rest in peace, Instant Messenger. Was like, hey, if college teammates ever faced off before in a fight, and I was asking around, most likely it was either somebody from Arizona State or Missouri, but you got two guys from Old Dominion, from Richmond and Mechanicsville, literally the same general region. If I get, what was that experience like? It's like, man, we've worked out in the room together. Now I got to go fight this guy. I don't dislike this guy. Come on.
Right. Dude, well, it was crazy. Of all the fighters in the world, right, for me to make my debut in arguably one of the largest MMA organizations going, you know what I mean? Is like, seriously, of all the people, you chose the dude that I trained with every single day? Because like Slack was my only training partner in the summertime. He was one of the few dudes, because he was training for the Olympics, and he was on the Olympic ladder at one point. So everyone else was gone for the summer. We were still there. We were trying to find people to work out with. So we train all summer long in the off season, and I'd do my best to help him with Greco, and then he'd help me with some folk style stuff, because I didn't care about Greco at the time. And so we spent so much time training together, and then here we are, we're gonna face off and try and cave each other's skulls in. And I was like, well, and the thing is, for me, like, when I fight, I typically don't have any animosity. Like, I can punch someone in the face and still like them. In fact, I do it every day. All of my training partners are some of my best friends, and we beat the hell out of each other. So I have no issue with beating up my friends. But when money's on the line and you're trying to build your career, it's like, well, somebody has to lose. And I mean, I certainly don't want it to be me, but I also don't want it to be you, because I like you and you're my buddy. So it was a bit of an awkward situation, to be sure.
So, and that fight ends up in Utah. I mean, that's like two guys from basically Richmond fighting in Utah. Now, let's fill in the blanks there between what brought you out to Utah, and tell us a little bit about what Savage Gentleman is.
So, what brought me out to Utah was actually my fighting career. I had a really good amateur career back in Virginia, and I think I was looking at about 7-0. And made my pro debut up in Maryland. And then it was essentially impossible for me to find any more professional fights. There wasn't a lot in that area. And when you're new to the game, no one's going to pay to fly you in somewhere, right? Because you're an unknown entity, and there's hundreds of guys locally that are way cheaper. So, it was at this crossroads where it's like, well, if I'm going to continue to pursue this career, like, I've got to get more fights. And so, the idea was there, well, we've got to move. Where do we go? And, the initial thought was Vegas, because that's kind of the mecca of fighting. But it turned out that my wife's company that she was working from home for, based in Salt Lake City, and they offered, hey, if you guys move out here, we'll give her a raise and we'll pay for the move. So that's a pretty good deal. Started looking and found that Jeremy Horn, one of the absolute legends of the sport, actually runs a gym out here. And so, I had my wife go and check it out, and he basically was teaching, and still teaches every single class, whether it's the brand new guy or the elite UFC level fighter. He's there all day, every day. And I was like, man, I can't think of anyone better to mentor under than a guy that has close to 200 professional MMA fights. There's no substitute for experience. So I'm like, yeah, this is the guy. And so that was it, man. We loaded up, we packed our things, and we headed out here, and I started training under him and learning a whole bunch of new stuff, getting fights all over the country. And, had a great time, man. Really, really enjoyed that. And I guess that probably brings us to Savage Gentleman.
Yeah. So real quick, so your last fight was just over a year ago.
Yep.
Are you pretty much, are you still training to get fights, or is that kind of on a hiatus right now?
It's on ice, man. Honestly, like that last fight, I kind of got to a level where it's like, okay, man, that was a great performance. I worked out a lot of the kinks. I mean, that's anyone who's wrestled kind of when you do combat sports and this one-on-one thing that it's like there's so much of a mental game to it, right? And for me, that's something that I've always struggled with, and I've made some strides. And in this last fight, man, it really clicked, and it came together. And it's like, okay, I've got a good handle on this. I'm happy with my performance. Let me put this on the shelf for a little bit because I've got some other things that I need to tend to. Because at the time, my wife was pregnant, and I just started this fledgling company called Savage Gentleman. And I've been planning for a while because unfortunately, fighting is one of those careers that you can't do forever, right? And so projecting into the future, it's like, well, what am I going to do when I can't compete anymore? And so that got me thinking, this business mindset, and took me down this path, which spawned Savage Gentleman. And so right now, the prospect of fighting, it's definitely on the back burner. I still haven't completely extinguished that flame. I still kind of get that itch every once in a while, but at the moment, I'm so far from being able to get a good training regiment in to even consider a fight that it's like, man, things would drastically have to change in order for me to consider competing at that level again. Now, a grappling tournament or something kind of low key like that, sure, no big deal. But to get in the cage, it's going to be it'll take a pretty big opportunity to point me in that direction as it currently stands.
So Savage Gentleman, I remember, we've been Facebook friends for a long time. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. So,
Yep.
I keep seeing this stuff pop up. You got this gnarly beard going on, and then I'm starting to look, it's like, wait, okay, Whammer's got a podcast. Cool. And I'm looking to see, you got on SoundCloud. So the numbers are like, not only has it got a podcast, damn, he's got some pretty good listenership too. So I start listening. You're talking about going to Guatemala. You're talking about like survival and all sorts of just Savage Gentleman type stuff. So where does the concept, what's the business plan? I mean, and how does the podcast tie in all this stuff too?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it actually started with me working with a company called Ready Man. That was my first foray into the real world, as it were. It's essentially all my life I'd been an athlete. I never did anything other than be an athlete or coach. And as far as like an actual real worky job, just small things here and there. And so
we call that adulting now, Whammer.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it? Yeah.
Adulting. So, yes.
And I hate it. I'm so terrible at it. So I realized I needed to start adulting, and I came across this company called Ready Man, who is at the time very closely affiliated with Black Rifle Coffee, which, if you're familiar with those guys, they've absolutely blown up and kind of taken the world by storm. But these guys were just doing so many rad things, and all this stuff in preparedness and self-reliance and survival and firearms and outdoors, and I was like, this is really cool. I need to be a part of this in some way. So, much like I did with my walking onto the wrestling team, I kind of walked onto this company where I just showed up and never went away. And I just kept finding stuff to do until they felt obligated to pay me. I mean, I guess there's a recurring theme here in my life. Again, probably too dumb to quit at stuff. But
that or nobody filed a restraining order.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess. I mean, luck was in my favor. And so with them, I kind of started to see some things in business and started to formulate my own ideas. And what I noticed was there was this kind of a gap where Savage meets Gentleman, right? In my mind, I think there's this like perfect balance between having the ability to be savage, but having the presence of mind to, for the most part, be a gentleman, right? The idea is be a gentleman until it's time to not be a gentleman, and then be a savage. And that's kind of where the whole thing stemmed from. And it's like, okay, well, how can we preach that message? How can we talk about the dichotomy of living our lives as men and having the ability to be a savage, but for the most part, you're a gentleman, right? You're not this knuckle dragging Neanderthal that's just, getting into street fights all the time. But if you had to throw down, you could handle your business. That's kind of the idea. But the rest of the time, you're well dressed, you're well kept, you're refined, and the idea of a true Renaissance man, bringing that back was my motivation. And so Savage Gentleman spawned from that idea, and to me, the best medium for getting that notion out there was through a podcast. And in working with those companies, with Black Rifle, with Ready Man, I found myself surrounded by savage gentlemen. Like, I mean, these are guys that are, however tough you want to think a wrestler or an MMA fighter is. I mean, these are Navy SEALs and Green Berets and Rangers and just all these special forces, high speed military guys running around doing secret squirrel stuff. But they're also just living everyday lives as businessmen and just doing all this really cool stuff. And I felt really inspired by those guys and really motivated to say, hey man, we should be cultivating both aspects. And that's really where the idea came from.
And if you look at your Instagram following, you're huge on Instagram, Josh Tyler MMA, 23,500 followers, man. That's what the heck. I'm behind the game on Instagram, man. I've got like 2,000 or something. I don't even know how many I've got.
Too shabby.
Yeah, I'm at 2,100 Instagram followers. Just pictures of my kids and craft beer. And
there you go. It's a good start.
And wrestling T-shirts. But like,
everything anyone could ever want in an Instagram page.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of have an unfair advantage because, as a professional fighter, obviously you're getting some level of notoriety, right? You're going around, you're traveling, you're on these shows with some really well-known individuals. It doesn't hurt that I look a lot like Conor McGregor and people just assume that I'm him. I think half of my followers are just confused and think that I'm Conor McGregor.
Yeah, they've been drinking too much Proper 12.
Probably. And so, that doesn't hurt. I had the opportunity to be on a survival TV show on Discovery Channel. So obviously that's going to lend itself to some exposure. And then, I've been really fortunate to make friends and with pretty well-known people in the space. I mean, just today, a good buddy of mine, Derek Wida, the guy's an absolute stud, did a pretty funny video, actually making fun of me, but it was too funny to be mad at. And that, something like that, I mean, that'll net you like 1,000 followers right off the bat. Just getting tagged by guys that are of that level. So, I don't think I'm that cool. I just have a lot, but my friends are super cool. And I think my following is probably more a product of that than anything else.
What I find interesting as we peruse savagegentleman.com, right off the bat, do the black eye. Okay, there's the Savage. Yep. But you're selling straight razors and you've got a giant beard. When was the last time you used a razor, dude?
So fun fact, and I'm surprised you don't know this about me. If I don't trim the edges and the sides, all the hair on my face will eventually grow together and connect, and I will become Teen Wolf.
You know what? I can see that.
So that being said, while I do have a pretty impressive beard by most standards, I have to maintain it on the sides, or it's a nightmare. So I do have to shave some. The guy who you're looking at on that page, actually with the black eye, is my business partner. He's actually the gentleman. So I'm more of the savage. He's more of the gentleman. He's a former Marine and super well put together guy, man. Just squared away. Big into outdoor adventuring and rock climbing, but just meticulous with how he dresses and how he keeps himself. So he's way more on the gentleman side. I'm a little bit more squirrely, but if I need to, I can clean up and rock a suit if the occasion arrives. But it's kind of this symbiosis, right, where we kind of meet in the middle and kind of find that sweet spot between the savage and between the gentleman that I think we all should be striving to obtain.
Yeah, and with the logo, you've got the straight razor opened up in a pair of brass knuckles, which the only time you really tying back into pro wrestling, because you'd see, oh no, he's got a pair of brass knucks. No, but cool things. I mean, you got a lot. You got leather in terms of the wallets. I mean, when it comes to your the branding and the type of stuff that you're putting out there. Part of it is, you've got there's a marketable name to it. I mean, the shirt looks cool. The branding, the name of the company sounds cool. But you've actually got some tangible products here. Why did you go the route with like the straight razor and the the bison leather?
Well, so the idea of leather. Well, so let's go back to the logo, right? So the logo, the idea of Savage Gentleman. It's like, okay, what are two items that embody that, right? And so obviously a straight razor is a very gentlemanly product. But there's something about straight razors too that are like kind of edgy. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's this like Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd's what I was thinking about. I saw that.
Right?
I'm not gonna.
And then obviously the brass knuckles are exactly what they are. I mean, they're completely savage, right? But it's just this, I mean, there's no other use for it. Unless you just want a cool paperweight, which if we ever get into selling them, they will be sold strictly as paperweights and nothing else. Not intended for any other use other than holding stuff down or for decoration, obviously.
Yeah, not intended for assault. Never mind.
Yeah, right. And so just trying to find something that just you see it and you're like immediately, that's cool. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it stands for, but it's a straight razor and it's brass knuckles, and that's freaking cool. Like that's what the response that I wanted to elicit. It's much in the way where when you hear Savage Gentleman, you're like, I don't know what that's about, but that's cool. I want to find out more. Like I wanted something to kind of grab your attention, right? And then the idea with leather was something that is like, okay, what is something that we can make? What is a medium that we can use and create a product that embodies both savage and gentleman? And immediately my mind went to leather because it's both primitive and very raw, but at the same time, it can be super, super classy, right? So you've got this rugged yet classy thing that, again, just is kind of that juxtaposition, but all in one place, right? And so we actually hand make our wallets here in the United States. That's kind of one of our claims, right? Is they're handmade by Matt and I in our space, and we ship them out to you with lots of love and blood and sweat and tears and maybe a little bit of whiskey. Wait, I can't say that, can I?
Well, who knows? You're an adult now. The question, it's not like you weren't doing it as a student athlete. That's the key.
No, certainly not. Never.
Yeah, and what classes do you take at ODU for something like that? That's what I want to know. Because I took a lot of them, but and I took a lot of them twice, but I don't know. I didn't know any leather making classes.
Well, it was something that we just kind of played around with. It was trial and error. We got a couple of sewing, some old school, just like crank handle sewing machines. So not the electric ones, like you pull the lever, right, and the bobbin goes up and down. And, we just started playing around with it. I mean, it's something about, I don't know, for me, just creating stuff, taking this raw element, right, this animal hide, and then processing it and changing it and molding it and fabricating it and turning it into a useful product, a wallet, a notebook cover, a leather coaster, whatever that may be, man. It's a very fulfilling process to me. And so, yeah, I mean, I dig it. It's a lot of fun.
As we circle back to the podcast, because I've got, I don't know, 20 of these things. I've put over, 1,000 episodes out in the last 10 years. And the medium is really kind of changed the game in terms of how things can be marketed. So, if you look at Savage Gentleman on its own, with just, okay, here's a storefront website, here's a cool story behind it, here's a guy with a beard, here's a straight razor. Yeah, you might get some sales out of that. What I've found interesting is how, a lot of the podcast doesn't really even talk about the products as much. You guys are telling stories about, the mindset or the mantra that kind of goes with the business. You kind of explained, you can be the savage. You can wear a suit and have a gnarly beard. You can go to a dinner party with a classy leather wallet and still be able to to tear somebody up for looking at your girl wrong. I don't advise that, or I don't condone that. But the point is like,
but if you had to,
if you had to, but the point is like, you've got so many good stories that cross the entire spectrum of, your branding image. So, I mean, how is it tough for you to well, one, how do you find the time to go to like Guatemala and do these survival type, escape things, or do like, Ultimate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Warrior shows or something like that? I'm just reading that because that was part of the headline I just Googled. But, how do you bring the time to do these things? And then how do you and your business partners and co-hosts kind of meld that into a podcast that doesn't even sound like a sales pitch?
Man, well, I would say first and foremost, I have a very loving and patient wife.
That's the key. I know that from owning my own business. That is crucial.
So for some of your more mature, older listeners, I think they can probably appreciate the importance of having that. I think that's the foundation, right? And then stemming from that, the thing about this company for me is that, selling the products is really, really just to keep the lights on. I mean, I saw a need that there's, I don't know, and maybe you've seen this. I mean, we're close to the same age. We're close enough.
We were. Hey, let's be clear that you guys were not saying that when you guys were freshmen and I was a senior. Okay, you guys, you and LaCroix and all those guys kept calling me Gramps. Okay, you called me Gramps, and I was like, okay, how old was I? I was 24. Okay, give me a break. Gramps. Now we're close to the same age.
Now we're the same age.
Oh, look at you, revisionist history.
Oh,
freaking calling me Gramps. You never mind. Continue.
Yes. So, but I remember growing up and looking at my male role models, right? My dad, my grandfathers, my great grandfathers. And it's like, these guys were men, right? They had the ability to do anything that they needed to do, and they didn't have to call anybody. They didn't have to look it up on Google. They didn't have to just sit there and cry and moan and woe is me because like things aren't working out for me. They just got it done, right? And somewhere along the way, I feel like we have slowly lost that ability, right? Where we've gotten so comfortable and everything is so convenient that we don't have to have those skills in our back pocket, which in some ways is good, but I think in other ways, man, it's detrimental. And so for me, Savage Gentleman was a way to try and kind of bang that drum of bringing back, this idea of manliness and self-reliance and the ability to do what needs to be done. And that was really what I was striving for. And so that's the driving force, right? The products and everything else are just secondary to hopefully, motivating and inspiring others to kind of, in whatever way, make themselves better as men. And granted, I don't want to make it exclusively men. I mean, we can say just people in general, right? But obviously we cater more towards men because that's all I know, right? I don't know how to make you a better lady. I don't know. I can't give you advice on how to make you a more savage madam, right? That's not my wheelhouse. So I'll stick to what I know. And that's really what we've been working to do. And so that's the motivation. The other stuff, yeah, we've got to do it, and we want to make a good quality product that people are going to love and cherish, and it's going to last for a lifetime. But we want to get this message out there, and to me, the only way to do that is to live the lifestyle. You know what I mean? You can't talk the talk and not walk the walk. I can't get on a podcast and talk to people about doing all this manly stuff having never done it, right? So every opportunity I get, if I can go and I can do a wilderness survival challenge where I'm in British Columbia for 24 days and have to build my own shelters and make my own fire and find my own food and fight off ninjas at the same time, then yeah, I'm going to jump on that opportunity. If I have the chance to go to Guatemala and train hand-to-hand combatives and teach their special forces and their secret service, it's like, yes, I'm going to jump on that. If I have the chance to train and learn from, one of the most well-known and winningest fighters in MMA history, it's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So, for us, it's It's all about kind of prioritizing, living the lifestyle first, delivering the message, and then letting the business kind of fall into place and take care of itself after that. And I don't know for any like young entrepreneurs if that's the correct way. You know, if you go to business school and you get your MBA, that may not be what they teach you. This is just the approach that I've taken, and you know, so far it's been panning out fairly well.
As we wrap things up here, there's a lot of stuff you can find out on Josh's podcast, Josh Whammer's podcast. I don't know, man. It's like when people call me by my real name. I just don't know how to respond sometimes.
It's like, wait, who are you talking to? Yeah,
it's like when I lived with George Sable. He was part of the crew before you got there. It was me, Rusak, George Sable, and Chad Filson. And
was this the original 12 house?
This was the wrestling house that was across from Whitehurst. This was before
pre-12 house.
Yeah, this is pre-12 house. This is 4801 Canova, which when Michael Martin came in told Dominion, that's the house that they lived in.
Okay,
that corner house. Yeah. So we're there, and I don't know. I think we're playing I think we were either playing NCAA college football 2000, it was probably been 1998 on the PlayStation 1. and Final Fantasy or something, and
right.
and my mom calls the house, and Sable picks up the phone. He goes, "Hello?" Nope, hangs up the phone. My mom calls right back. You know, "Hello? Yeah, hold on, Twinkie phone." I was like, "Dude, you hung up on my mom." Like, "No, dude, no." I was like, "No, the woman who just asked for Jason. Your name's Jason, dude. I've been living here 8 months. Yeah." So anyway, that's enough. We'll have to get Sable on the show.
Your mail away the whole time, like. I don't know. Some guy named Jason keeps getting mail here. I've just been tossing it.
Yeah, I think that actually happened with a rent check one time, but that may or may not be. I don't know. Maybe we needed money for something else. But one thing I want to bring up, and we were kind of talking about this earlier, is so there was a tradition with the wrestling program that goes back decades, and it was the old athletic trainer, Mr. Andy Zucker. Strength and conditioning coach, I think, was his actual title. He wasn't the athletic trainer. Uh-huh. And there was a picture of his that was liberated from the field house back in the 80s, back when Zuck left Old Dominion. He was styling, profiling, had maybe he used a Savage Gentleman straight razor to buzz the head off completely, but he had a interesting haircut and a creeper stash. And that was when they had all the athletic staff's picture up on the wall in the field house before they tore it down, renovated it, and whatnot. Well, one year that picture got liberated, and I'm not sure what class did it. I want to say it was, Jamie Kelly believes it was like the Tom Sinecor era, which is, again, predating us, the Peter Horst, who was Rusak's coach, that era. Uh-huh. And it's made its way through the team and the program for decades. And then I remember Filson had it as it was handed down from Jamie Kelly to Filson and our crew. And when all those guys, there was this disconnect. The only person who was like still affiliated with the program between Chad and then your era was me. And Filson goes, "Hey, Twinkie, hand this. It's my job to hand this off." So I had it for a year in the house that I lived with the girls on the sailing team. And then I bequeath it to you and Robbie because Robbie Gosnell. So because you two kind of were kind of like the last holdovers of our type of guys. So
we were the only holdovers.
Yeah. What was it like?
Actually, we were the last guys from that freshman year. So we were the last Gray Simon guys, and I was actually the last. I was the last guy because Robbie graduated before. So I was kind of the last man standing. And now that I think about it, I think there were 14 freshmen that came in my year, that year with Gray Simons. And I was the only one to actually finish the program and go through all 4 years of my eligibility out of that group. If that puts into kind of perspective what we were dealing with in that era. Yeah. Of how harsh and how, intense that regime change was, man. Attrition doesn't even hardly describe it. So anyway, yeah.
So what was it like living with Zuck on your wall for an entire year or two?
Oh, it was an absolute inspiration. We woke up,
because you guys didn't live near campus. You guys lived down near out in Ocean View.
Yeah, we lived in Ocean View, which was fantastic. I actually quite enjoyed that because I would get up and I'd go for a run, on in the sand, and then go for a swim, and then hop back, jog back up to that. We were literally 3 blocks from the beach. The only downside was like the 5 a.m. practices. That kind of sucked because you had to get up extra early to get there in time. Again, I think I don't know if they're still doing those practices. Something tells me that after we left, things may have eased up and become a little bit less terrible. Here's the thing: there's a point of diminished returns, right? Where you're leaning on guys so hard that you're actually hindering their performance, and we straddled that line. If we didn't exceed it, we were darn close, But I think for the sake of prosperity and judging by the success that Old Dominion has had, I would wager that scale has tilted a little bit more to the productivity side and the less, hey, let's crush these dudes and see if we can get them to quit, which is what I got to experience.
Well, one thing is for sure. When you talk about reliable people, I will give Josh Tyler credit because one night I was out, night before I was supposed to leave for the NCAA tournament. This is Steve's first year, so this is Whammer's second year, and my tires get slashed outside of a local Norfolk establishment. And who was there ready to, all right, guys, I need a ride home. Whammer right there, picking us up at Pizza Inn and dropping us off and making sure some of us at least got a ride back to the NCAAs the next day. So that was late. That was not early. That was not like, that was late.
Yeah, that was like a 3 a.m. ish.
I'm questioning, do I leave this in the show or not? That's what I'm wondering now.
Yeah,
but this is the realness. This was the realness.
That's on you. That's on you, man. But I think, we can tie that back in with the idea of, that's kind of the gentleman's side, right? Where it's like, hey, man, there's a sense of loyalty.
Loyalty. At this point, I expect royalties if that's where you're going with this story.
Oh, man. Well, we'll have to cut it off right here. Then.
Yeah.
No, I think, I think, again, that's something that we're somewhat lacking in the culture now, where it's like, it sucks for you, man. Sorry. When you see your phone, you get that text in the middle of the night and you're like, yeah, someone else will take care of it. He probably has AAA, right? But to me, it's that mindset of if it's not you, then who, right? And if it's not now, then when? And it's kind of keeping that mantra and a lot of these things, I'll be honest, a lot of the stuff that I have learned, a lot of these life lessons, I actually picked up within the halls and within the wrestling room at Old Dominion. And that's not to sound contrived or whatever. I mean, that's the God's honest truth. And, I'll leave you with one story that kind of, again, harkens back. I know we're probably running long on time, but
it's a podcast. It's as long as it needs to be.
Okay. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the best advice that I've received was actually from Lee Pritz. Some may know him as Shooter. And it was my senior year, and you probably know this, Twinkie, but I was plagued with injuries at this point, and I had really messed up my neck to the point where the nerve damage was so severe I could barely lift my left arm. And so obviously I was out of the roster, I was out of the lineup, and I'm looking at it, and it's like, man, we've only got a couple more months left. There's no point in me being here. I can't compete. I can barely train. This is awful. And I, had made up my mind, and I was like, hey, coach, you know what, man, it's been great, but there's no point in me being here, man. I'm just going to call it good. Best of luck in the rest of the season. And I'll never forget what he said to me. And like I said, I walked in the door, man, like head hanging low, tail tucked between my legs. This is probably one of the lowest points that I've ever been, because I've never quit anything in my life, right? And, after clawing and scraping and trying to, work my way onto this team that I probably at the time had no business being on, now, after 4 years, right at the very end, right about to cross the finish line, I'm going to throw in the towel, right? And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to give you some advice, and I've given this before, and there's people who have taken it, and there's guys that haven't. And I can tell you, every single person that has ever quit has regretted it. Every person who's ever come up to me and told me, hey, coach, you know what, I'm going to walk away from this, every single one has come back and they said, man, that was the worst decision I've ever made in my life. And I was like, I don't believe that. And he's like, no, and I'll tell you why. He's like, quitting becomes a habit. This is what Shooter said. Quitting becomes a habit, And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. He's like, so, right now this is wrestling. It's not life or death. It's college. You'll move on. You'll have a life. You'll go on, whatever. So you could very well walk away. But if you start quitting now, the moment things get hard in the rest of your life, it'll be easier and easier to quit. Your job gets hard, your boss is being a jerk, and you hate how things are going, you're going to quit that job. Your marriage gets hard, things aren't going great with you and your wife, you're going to quit that marriage. He's like, I've seen it time and time again. He's like, the best advice I can give you is don't start quitting and don't do it now. Stick out the rest of a couple months, show up, support your team, be a good training partner. He's like, and trust me, you're not going to regret it. And I didn't believe him at the time, but I respected him enough to at least heed his advice, right? And when I look back on it now, he's 100% right. I mean, if that had been a decision that I would have regretted for the rest of my life, like knowing that I saw that thing through, no matter how hard, how difficult it got, knowing that, hey, I stuck that out and endured. I mean, that's been something that's been a benchmark that I've compared everything in my life to be quite honest, both my fighting career, going out and that survival challenge that I mentioned, those words came in my mind. There was one night where I was to the point of hypothermia, freezing to death, starving, hadn't slept in days. And, the context of the show is we could quit whenever we wanted to. And I thought about it. I really, truly was on the verge. And again, man, his words came back into my mind, and that was one of the things that helped me keep going. And so, I really, truly have to say, and Pritz, I don't know if you listen to this thing, man, but shout out to you, homie. That's been some solid advice, and hats off, dude. That was sage wisdom. I appreciate it.
Sage wisdom for the savage gentleman here. No, I'm just that's all we got. Yeah, I can throw, dude. It's all Twinkie announcer voice, man. I can change that up. But all right, Whammer, in the time we got left, well, whatever time we got left, tell the folks out in Monarch Nation where they can pick up your stuff, where they can follow you on the Insta Faces, the Snapgrams, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, if you're about that social media life, you can check me out, Josh Tyler MMA, at symbol Josh Tyler MMA, and that's universal on Facebook. That's my Instagram page. That's Twitter. If you want to check out Savage Gentleman, www.savagegentleman.com. And tell you what, I'd mentioned this before, and I think we forgot about it, but let's do a discount. Let's do a discount for the listeners. So,
Christmas season's coming up as we record this, November 29th. Yeah. Do a Christmas deal. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so let's do Matt Talk. Does that work for you?
MATTALK. Yep.
Yeah, we'll do Matt Talk, and let's do 20% off your order on that.
All right, that'll work. 20% off Savage Gentleman, and you can get the Savage Beard Oil or the Gentleman Beard Oil.
Savage or either way, depending on which way you're feeling that day. Yeah, we've got shirts, obviously. We've got wallets. We've actually got some other high-end stuff that's, we've got a Bowie knife that is like an absolute work of art. Buddy of mine hand forged this thing. It looks like the Sword of Omen. For those of you that might be Thundercats fans, this thing is fantastic.
Oh,
yeah, yes. I'm so glad you got that reference.
Dun, 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 dun.
You can just insert the music. You can go back and just edit
copyrights, dude. You don't want to get that thing yanked off of iTunes. Dude, if you've had the podcast news lately, people are getting sued for that. So nope, we're not doing that. That's why I have nice royalty-free music.
Yeah,
I paid for at the front of the show.
Yeah, that's the way to go. But yeah, check out the podcast. Give that a listen. Occasionally, if I'm feeling inspired, I'll write a blog post about who knows what, my recent comings and goings. But yeah, check it out, follow. And if you like it, great. And if not, well, it's okay too. There's plenty of other stuff going on in the world that you can check out.
Not always safe for work, but always safe for, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something catchy to end the show with. I just can't do it.
For the Savage Gentleman. But always safe for the Savage Gentleman.
For the Savage Gentleman in your life. Promo code MattTalk. Save 20% off your order this holiday season. Yeah, Yeah, smooth like butter.
I might have to contract you for some commercial work for some
Dude,
videos.
I am. Yep, I can do that. All right, Josh, this has been the ODU Wrestling Monarch Madcast. Check out all the things about ODU Wrestling, of course, at odusports.com. ODU Wrestling, NC State on November 30th. Check in with us with updates throughout the course of the season. So for the Whammer, Josh Tyler, MMA, I'm Jason Bryant. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, man.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.